What's cooking? Good looking. All right, chat. We just got home and rested from a great event in Wisconsin at Trackside Hobbies and Raceway. The team associated B7 was an absolute space shuttle dream to drive. Today, we're going to be going over the setup and some of the things that I like to do to make it such a space shuttle that it is. So let's jump right into the video. I'll be going over everything that I consider changing at each track and what I did throughout the event in Wisconsin. So starting at the front end, we have the caster system, kind of a hot topic right now. I have been preferring the B6.4 caster system. We have the 4 trailing as always, but a lot of people ask me, what's the benefit of running this over the B7 stuff? I'm not saying the B7 stuff is bad, but this is just driver preference. I prefer the way that the B6.4 caster system handles a little bit more. I feel like it's a little bit smoother on the wheel initially and a little bit more predictable for me to drive compared to the B7 stuff. I will say there are certain conditions where the B7 caster system is far superior, but I have noticed overall the B6 caster system, you can never really go wrong with it. And at worst, it will be decent. So I just kind of stuck with it, and my driving matches the way it feels pretty well. So I stay with it on the car. It's just a little bit smoother, a little bit more predictable, and a little bit easier for me to get consistent lap times. And when I run this, I pretty much always run HT+1 steering plates. Axle height pretty much stays at 2 for the majority of the time, and the caster is shimmed forward. Not to mention, we pretty much always run this camber link system, this camber link position, I should say. It's pretty much the safety net package and old faithful, old reliable, like Saquon Barkley for the Philadelphia Eagles, as you could say. Moving on, we have the kick up and caster insert. This is something that I do change from time to time. Right now, there's a plus 2.5 kick up and a 0 in the caster block. And I would say plus 2.5 kick up is pretty much always standard. I don't really stray from that, but I will change this insert in here from 0 to 2.5 and sometimes even 5 depending on the grip level and obstacles. At Trackside, you kind of want the most amount of steering, so I would run 0 there for the most maximum corner speed. But if you need a little bit more traction out of the corners, or let's say there's a whoop section, you need the car to stay straighter and be less upset driving, then you could go to 2.5 or even 5 to just get the car to track a little bit straighter out of the corners and have a little bit more numb of a steering feel. And as far as that goes, that's pretty much the front end settings. I don't really mess with anything else. Sometimes I'll add a bulkhead shim. Right now I have 0 bulkhead shims, and that's pretty much standard for me. If I need the front end to roll a little bit more, get a little bit more grip on the front end, then I will add a bulkhead shim, but we got it at 0 right now. Good setting to have. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the front end settings on this John. We could flip it back to the rear end now. Moving on to the rear end here, we have the shock location, something that I change quite frequently based on the layout specifically. Right now I have it 1 stood up. I don't really use all the way out and all the way in ever. I just go in between these 2 in the middle. And right now it's stood out, and that is for, like I said previously, more steering. When you have it stood up like this, it transfers more weight to the front end, get you on the nose faster, get those front tires gripping, and you should be in and out of the corners a little bit faster. When you have it laid down, it stays on the rear end a little bit more, and you should have a little bit easier of a feel throughout the corner to drive. So Trackside is super tight track. You got to be quick in and out of the turn, so I stood it up, and this helped get me through the turns a little bit faster. This is one of my better changes throughout practice. Moving on to the axle height. We're at 2 on the diff and 2 on the hub. I like to match the hub and diff with each other. I don't like to mismatch it, so if I have the axle at 1, the diff's at 1, etc. We started the race at 1 for a little bit more traction, but it was kind of rolling on the rear end, and it was, if the rear end felt a little bit soft, not really supportive enough, so we went up to 2, and it seemed to help the car keep its flat posture in the sweeper at high speed. and a little bit more corner speed. So that was something that I liked a lot. Moving on to the rear camber link. I run this rear camber link in a narrow position with extra shims out here. It's something that I changed during practice at the Roar 10 Skill Nationals at Beach RC, and it kind of turned my car into a space shuttle. So I don't really change it. I will adjust the height. I go down when I want it to be a little bit stiffer and up when I want it to roll a little bit more, but right now it's down. So yeah, we pretty much run it. It's not necessarily standard. It's a little bit abnormal to run it in the narrow position, but just the way I like to drive, it seemed to suit my needs very well. So I kind of keep it in this narrow position all the time, and I don't really stray from that. With the narrow position, you got to have a little bit more camber links on the hub, camber link washers on the hub. We're at 3 mil right now. I go back and forth between 2.5 and 3. It might not seem like that big of a change, but it does make a difference on the track. 3 millimeters is a little bit stiffer, a little bit more supported than 2.5, and a little bit quicker in those tight corners at Trackside Hobbies. And some of the things that we don't really change that much, kind of just run 2 millimeters on here, let it rip. Kind of just run 5 mil on here, let it rip. I mean, you could do 4 or 6, but 5 just makes life a little bit easy, and kind of just leave it at that. Moving on to the pill locations. I try to keep the C block center. It just seems to be the best baseline, and then we adjust the D block pill from there. So I started off in practice and qualifying. We had the D block pill 0.5 down and center. And when you add anti-squat like that, what it does is it helps a lot in the corners, a little bit more faster in the corners, transfers more weight to the front end, kind of like standing this up. And that's how I ran it and liked it like that throughout qualifying, A1, A2. And A2 at the event, my car was a little bit hard to drive. The grip came up quite a bit on main day. So we were a little over the nose and had some problems with too much steering. So I raised the D block pill to center. Now the pills are center, took out that half degree of anti-squat, and the car was significantly easier for me to drive in A3 and not make mistakes. So that is something that I look at a lot, and I change it quite a bit. And I don't normally go higher in the D. It's basically just down, half down, and center. And that's kind of just the baseline that I like to stick to. It's a window I found that works good for me. And that's basically the rear end settings that I like to adjust from track to track. The camber link, the anti-squat and the D block, and the shock stood up here. Sometimes you can go axle height. If you need a little bit more traction, you're on a looser surface, then you can go back down to 1 axle height. So yeah, between all those things, that's kind of what I look for at the track, to fine tune the window and stick to that baseline setup as much as you can, and it should make life easier. All right, last but not least, we have the chassis. We got a short chassis on this John right now, and I will say, from track to track, it does depend what kind of surface you're running on to what kind of chassis is best. I have kind of just came up with the general consensus that on natural dirt surfaces and loose dirt, you want the short chassis, the -4. As to on glued surfaces or carpet, you probably want the kit chassis, which is 4 millimeters longer, easier to drive on higher bite. But the short chassis for natural dirt surfaces has a little bit more rotation, a little bit more forward drive, and it's just a little bit more nimble and quick, which on a track like Trackside or Hobby Action, that's something that you would want. But let's say if you're running on Hoosier or Coyote, glued track, or even carpet, then you probably don't want the short chassis. I would say that the long one is preferred for those conditions. Not to mention, we have no servo weight. I don't really mess with servo weight. We've got the Reedy electronics, kitted out, Reedy servo, Reedy ESC, battery, motor. We got the aluminum electronic weight plate and a 20-gram Reedy battery plate under the car. That is the only weights I run in the car. And that is going to be a good tour of the chassis there. All right, moving on to the most important part of the setup, the shock package. I think I have a pretty good baseline for the way I like the car to handle for the shock package. Right now, we're going to start with the spring package. We got the 1UP Racing yellow front springs paired with the team associated white rear springs, all 13 millimeter. Starting with the front shock here, we got a 1.8 by 1.9, 2.5 millimeter thick piston with 30 weight oil, +2 eyelet, and the stroke is coming in at about 22.03 millimeters, so just 22. Then we have the rear shocks. We got the +4 eyelet, as you can see, and the stroke is coming in at about 28.50 on the nose. And in the rear shock, we have a 2 by 1.9 piston on a 2.5 millimeter thick piston with 27 weight oil. I try not to mess with the piston much unless the surface is drastically different. And we really just tune the oil. If the grip is a lot higher or the surface is a lot more grippy or abrasive or the temperature is a lot hotter, then you can go up in oil to 32, 30, or maybe even 35 front oil, but that's pretty rare. It's more common to see 32, 30, and 30, 27, depending on grip level. And that's about all we try to do with the shocks. I mean, you can get a little fancy with the piston, but honestly, I don't think you're going to find a package that works much better all around than this package right here. And you can honestly lose your mind. You can drive yourself crazy testing piston packages, piston and oil. So just to make your life easy on yourself, I would just go to this baseline here, run it, call it good. Moving on to the aero package, we got the new Hot Race Urus 2 with the fin on the back. I really like the way this body's been feeling on dirt. It offers a nice balanced feel of steering and traction. And I don't really plan on using any other body for the dirt racing. We have a carpet specific body for carpet races, but when I'm showing up to a dirt track, there's pretty much 100% guarantee that this is the body that I will be using, as it has worked very well for me on multiple dirt surfaces now. Then we have the tires. We have the Slick V1, and the notes on this is, first of all, white compound, and second of all, when the grip gets high, you want to glue those front sidewalls to make sure the car is a little bit easier to drive and it doesn't traction roll as easy, especially when you're running on slicks and all that traction readily available. It's pretty easy for the tire to grab and flip over, causing a crash, and we don't want that. So if you glue up the sidewalls, it helps you get into that finish line a little bit cleaner, and it just makes your life a little bit easier overall. So those are the notes there. And yeah, that's pretty much all we can cover. I had a 7-inch wing on the car, which helps for rear grip and stability. And that's about all that we can cover with the B7. This thing has been absolutely excellent for me to drive the past few events. Super happy with it. We got a nice baseline setup, and we can actually probably post the setup sheet in here if we can figure out how to edit it in. So if we can, we're going to drop it right here. And that's about all we can cover on this car. It's been awesome for me the last few months of racing. I got a nice baseline that I really like the way it feels, and I don't really change much. I kind of just went over the only things that I look for when I go from track to track to make sure that the car is optimized and driving similar each time to the way I like it. So if you just kind of focus on those things, you have a nice baseline, you only change a couple things. We call it the playbook. You stick to the playbook. Then life should be pretty easy. I just went over my playbook, and I hope you guys like it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and find it useful. And let me know if your B7 is as much of a space shuttle as mine was out there. LFG, come back to the video. In Hornsey YouTube. Not to mention, We got some new merch on the way here. Let me know if you like the design. And if you hate it, then don't tell me, because I don't want to hear the hate. And we're going to try to get these Johns for sale sooner than later. We got multiple different colors, multiple options. This is the logo. This is the hoodie. High quality material. Good stuff. And if you want to support your boy, then you're $45 away from wearing one of these bad boys. Till next time. Peace out.